the Sunnah, the Hadiths. Then the author, rahimahullah, was speaking on the great champion of the 5th century, Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, rahimahullah. Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi. And Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, he took this topic and he tackled the topic. And he discussed it in detail. And he basically analyzed all of the available data on the topic. All available data. What we mean by data, al-akhbar al-warida, the narrations that are found. Prophetic narrations, narrations from Sahaba, narrations from tabi'een, narrations that say don't write down anything except for the Quran. Narrations that state the exact opposite, which command, allow, and encourage for the Prophet's words to be written down. And also we have information or narrations that talk about the very first one, أول من دون العلم فلان فلان. Fulan was the first one to make tadween of ilm. Fulan was the first one to make tadween of ilm. Umar radiallahu anhu is supposedly said, burn these scrolls, burn these books. وهكذا. We have data, naam, and you analyze that data. You sift through it. You look through it. You break it down. You categorize it. You discard the data which is unuseful. For whatever reason behind it being unuseful. It's inauthentic. It's not true, it's incomplete, etc. This is what the Muslims were doing hundreds of years ago, almost over 1,000 years ago. Muslims were doing this. طيب. So in this book, Taqyid al-Ilm, Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, rahimahullah, a few of his books have been translated into English as well. This is what he did. Now, everybody understand this? This is what he did. And after he meticulously sifted through all of those pieces of information, those akhbar, he came out with results. Results, nata'ij. The first result that he came out with was, the author says, لم يصح حديث في النهي عن كتابة الحديث سوى حديث أبي سعيد الخدري الذي رواه مسلم مع اختلاف بين البخاري ومسلم في رفعه هذا غلط خطأ مطبعي ووقفه. The first point is despite the large number of reports that prohibit writing down the Prophet's words, none of them were authentic. None of them were authentic, except for one. And that is the narration of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, radiyallahu anhu, that's collected in Sahih Muslim, in which the Prophet ﷺ is quoted to have said, لا تكتبوا عني لا تكتبوا عني شيئا سيئا. Don't write down anything from me. Do not record, do not jot down, do not document anything from my words. Don't write down anything that you hear from me except for the Quran. وَمَنْ كَتَبَ عَنِّي شَيْئًا سِوَى الْقُرْآنِ فَلْيَمْحُهُ. And anyone who has written down anything besides the Quran, then he must erase it. So this hadith here is the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri that's found in Sahih Muslim. Al-Khatib al-Baghdadi said this is the only narration regarding the prohibition of writing down hadiths which is authentic. Which is authentic. All the other narrations are inauthentic. And even this hadith, he says, there was a difference between Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim. And Imam Bukhari held that this hadith was weak as well. Tayyib. So that's the first point. So therefore, if we have many narrations and none of them are authentic, they're all weak or extremely weak, then hypothetically speaking, they're useless. They're useless for an argument. They're of no value anymore. So the proof that no hadiths were written down in the time of the Prophet ﷺ is this hadith and this narration. Those narrations are not sahih at all. So they're of no scientific value anymore. Except for the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. طيب. Number two, ثانيا أن الأمر استقر في حياته صلى الله عليه وسلم على إباحة الكتابة. The second one is that there was writing down, there was documentation and conservation during his lifetime, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's no doubt about that. the Prophet ﷺ allowed people to write things down besides the Quran and several different akhbar. ثالثا, number 3, أن التدوين بمعناه الواسع وهو الجمع قد بدأ في زمن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. The linguistic or the lexical, the basic meaning of tadween, compilation, conservation, in its general sense, was something that did not start in the time of Ibn Shihab. It did not start in the time of Abdul Aziz. It didn't start in the time of this one or that one. It had started in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. The specific, sophisticated writing and authoring and categorizing, no. But the concept of hadith being put down, being written down, being put on some type of writing material existed in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And that is a difference. You may say, what's the difference between point 2 and point 3? Point 2 says that the Prophet ﷺ allowed people to write things down. And point 3 says that tadween began in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. What's the difference between the two? What is the difference? It's a slight difference here. If you say, Shaykh, can I take notes? I says, tafaddali, go ahead, take notes. That's ibahatul kizaba. I'm allowing you to write down, correct? That doesn't mean that you actually wrote it. Nor does it mean that it's been proven and documented that you, during the class, what? Took down notes. It's a difference between the two. Just because the Prophet allowed it doesn't mean that it was done. Nor does it mean that he found the data, the evidence, in which there was done in abundance. Everybody clear on this? So that's the difference between point 2 and point what? Point 3. رابعا أن امتناع من امتنع من الصحابة والتابعين عن كتابة الحديث ليس للنهي الوارد في حديث أبي سعيد الخدري ولكن هذا الامتناع معلل بأسباب أخرى. Why the companions refused to write down, some of the companions, not all of them, some of them, and some of the tabi'een, why they refused to write down hadiths, it wasn't because of the hadith of Abu Sa'id al-Khudri. It wasn't because of the prohibition from the Prophet. He says there are other reasons, personal reasons why some of them and not all of them, why some of them chose not to write down hadiths. Or one may say, why some of them forbade others from writing down hadiths. Why some of them would tell their friends or their students, don't write anything down. He saw a student taking notes, he would rip it up. He would throw it in the water. He would throw it in the wind. He says, first and foremost, خوف انكباب الناس على الكتب. It's fair for the people to lose their strength of memory and rely upon books. Or even before the concept of memory, just relying on books besides the Quran. وانشغالهم أو انشغالهم بها عن القرآن. وقد أورد إلى آخره. طيب, people preoccupying themselves with the study of the Quran, the devotion to the Quran. ومنها الحفاظ على ملكة الحفظ عند المسلمين أو ومنها الحفاظ على ملكة الحفظ عند المسلمين إذ الاتكال على الكتاب يضعفها ولذلك كان بعضهم يكتب ثم يمحو ما كتب ولو كان النهي عن الكتابة مستقر عندهم لما كتبوا ابتداء ولو كان النهي عن الكتابة مستقرا عندهم. طيب, the second reason was to protect the gift and the talent of memorization that the Muslims had been blessed with and that the Arabs had been blessed with. The power of memory. The more you write, the less you memorize. The more you depend upon the pen and the pad, the less you depend upon your cerebrum, your brain. Forcing yourself to memorize something. I'm going to drive around today, and I intentionally left my phone home. No GPS. I'm going to force myself to remember the way. No GPS. Now, I'm going to leave my home today, and I'm going to cut off my phone. I'm going to call my wife, I'm going to call my brother, I'm going to call this one, I'm going to call that one, all from my head. You may forget, you may have to stop, you may get lost, but if you keep doing it eventually, you'll train yourself to have strong memory. You're training yourself to have what? Strong memory. Your memory will evolve. It will evolve. And being forced to depend upon it being strong and powerful. طيب خيرا inshallah. Now, with regards to خيرا inshallah. So therefore, it's very simple. The scholars of Islam, they use different ways of looking at those narrations. That's what Khatib, that was his results. And other scholars, they may say that there's no need for this to say that they're weak, or it's no contradiction between the two. That there was a time in which you couldn't write down, and then when the Prophet ﷺ felt confident that the Sahaba could write down the Quran and write down what he said and did without mixing and confusing the two, he allowed them. Or when they say the Prophet forbade people from writing down his words who were strong memorizers. And as for those who are poor in their memory, or a bit weak in their memory, or not as strong in their memory, he allowed them. In other words, we have maslak al-jam' wa tawfiq, and then we have maslak al-tarjih. Khayran inshaAllah. So therefore, at the end of the day, in brief, there lies no doubt that there is a strong amount of information which clearly proves that there were hadiths that were written down in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. We're going to read some of them. And we have an even stronger amount of information, or large amount of information, that shows us is that there was a great deal of hadith written down in the time of the Sahaba, and even more in the time of the tabi'een, etc., until it evolved into what it evolved into, the muwatta'at, the musannafat, etc. Khayran inshaAllah. Tayyib. So the next section in the book says, he says, ثانيا جهود الصحابة رضي الله عنهم في تدوين السنة المطهرة ونقلها إلى الأمة. Now he mentions some of the examples pertaining to what the Sahaba did to write down hadiths and actually put them down upon material, writing material, whatever it is, paper, if there was even paper in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, papyrus, tree bark, leather, etc., writing in the sand, etc. He says, الحث على حفظ وتثبيت ذلك الحفظ حتى كان كثير منهم يأمر تلاميذه بالكتابة لتثبيت حفظهم ثم محو ما كتبوه حتى لا يتكل على الكتاب. قال الخطيب: وكان غير واحد من السلف يستعين على حفظ الحديث بأن يكتبه ويدرسه من كتابه، فإذا أتقنه محى الكتاب خوفا من أن يتكل القلب عليه فيؤدي إلى نقصان الحفظ وترك العناية بالمحفوظ. He says some of them would write down hadiths only for the purpose of training, only for the purpose of bolstering their memory. Study it, study it, study it, close it, study it, close it, study it, close it. And then when they had it locked down, it was burnt into their hearts, then they would pour water upon it or rip it up or burn it. They would only use writing as a temporary means of medicine. A jump start, that's it. Everybody clear on this? Like you write down a khutbah, Samir? You write your khutbah down. You plan it out, you write it out. Then after that, you memorize it. You only use it for a what? A stepping stone. He then says here, number 2, الكتابة بالسنة بعضهم إلى بعض ومن أمثلة ذلك ما يلي. And before we move forward, obviously, this section here, get into the Sahifa section. Tayyib. Tayyib. Before we move forward, who can mention some of the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ, which clearly prove that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ allowed people to write things down during his lifetime? اكتبوا لأبي شاه. طيب هذا في قصة من؟ حديث من؟ حديث العباس أو ابن Abbas? Who can tell us a hadith in which the Prophet allowed the people to write things down? Even if you have all of the specifics, no problem. Uktubu li Abi Shah. The hadith said, he was giving the khutbah, and a man from Yemen came, whose name was Abu Shah. And he complained. He said, "Oh Messenger of Allah, I can't get all of your khutbah. I can't memorize all of your khutbah. I want to take it back. Can I write it down? Can you allow it to be written down for me?" The Prophet ﷺ, he says, "Uktubu li Abi Shah." He told not one companion, he says, "Uktubu." Many Sahaba to write down hadiths for this man, Abu Shah. That's one. Even though the takhrij is not complete, but nasbira alayhi, inshaAllah. Another example in which the Prophet allowed the companions or commanded them to write things down. Just think about the 5 pillars of Islam. The Prophet ﷺ is sending messages to the different chieftains, leaders and kings, giving them da'wah. If it's a letter that contains his speech, then that is the recording of his hadith, that's his sunnah. That's what he's saying or doing or commanding. There are more, many more. Think about the 5 pillars of Islam. What's the 3rd pillar of Islam? Ada zakat. So did everyone memorize everything about zakat by heart? So what did the Prophet ﷺ do regarding zakat? Not the contracts. Maqadir al-zakat. He sent down a list of the chart of what is to be due. When you have 40 sheep, when you have 5, 10, 15, 20 camels, when a camel is 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, etc. If you have cows, 30 cows, 10 cows, 20 cows, etc. The maqadir of zakah. We're not talking about the vegetables or the grain, but we're talking about, let's just say, livestock right now. Bahimat al-an'am. The hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ, he sent the Sahaba with the miqdar. He sent them with the estimation of zakah. If you have a farm of animals, when is zakah obligatory? When is zakah obligatory? How many animals do you have to have in order for you to be required to pay what? Zakah. That's not mentioned in the Quran. Those were the words and the teachings of the Prophet ﷺ which were written down. There are many other examples. Many other examples. Even if you just give the general gist of the story, that's sufficient. Debts is not always the words of the Prophet. Al-Wasiyah. What about Wasiyah? Tayyib. That's everyone's homework assignment, inshallah ta'ala. Everyone's homework assignment. Compile as many hadiths as you can about hadiths being written down in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Everybody clear on that assignment? Compile as many hadiths as you possibly can regarding the Prophet ﷺ allowing, commanding, encouraging people to write down hadiths from him during his lifetime. Tayyib. The next point he says is that the Sahaba, not only did they write down things of the Prophet's words, but they corresponded with each other. They wrote to each other with the hadiths. كتب أسيد بن حضير الأنصاري رضي الله عنه بعض الأحاديث النبوية وقضاء أبي بكر وعمر وعثمان وأرسلوا إلى مروان بن الحكم وكتب جابر بن سمرة رضي الله عنه بعض أحاديث رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وبعث بها إلى عامر بن سعد بن أبي وقاص بناء على طلبه ذلك منه. وكتب زيد بن أرقم رضي الله عنه بعض الأحاديث النبوية وأرسل بها إلى أنس بن مالك رضي الله عنه. وكتب زيد بن ثابت في أمر الجد إلى عمر بن الخطاب رضي الله عنه ذلك بناء على طلب عمر نفسه. He mentions several different narrations, and here are the footnotes. Imam Muslim, Musnad Imam Ahmad, Sunan ad-Daraqutni, etc., and which the Sahaba wrote to each other, such as Usayd ibn Hudayr. He sent it to the ruler at the time, Marwan ibn al-Hakam. Hadiths of the Prophet, statements of Abu Bakr, statements of Umar, and statements of Uthman. For qada, for fiqh, legislative, judicial issues. Jabir ibn Samura radiallahu anhu as well. He sent hadiths to Amr ibn Sa'd, the son of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. Zayd ibn Arqam radiallahu anhu. He sent hadiths to Anas. Zayd ibn Thabit radiallahu anhu. He sent hadiths to Umar. وهكذا. حث تلاميذهم على كتابة الحديث وتقييده. Many companions, not only would they do it, not only did they have certain books or scrolls or memorandums, but they would also encourage their students to do the same. They would encourage their students to do the same. كان أنس بن مالك الأنصاري رضي الله عنه يحث أولاده على كتابة العلم فيقول يا بني قيدوا العلم بالكتاب. وكان يقول رحمه الله تعالى ورضي عنه كنا لا نعد علم من لم يكتب علمه علما. الله أكبر. Anas radiallahu anhu, he used to say, oh my sons, write down what you hear, write down what you learn, write down your knowledge, preserve your knowledge, take notes. And he also used to say, كنا لا نعد علما من لم يكتب علمه علما. The people who had knowledge, but they didn't write it down and they didn't preserve it, we wouldn't consider it to be knowledge. We wouldn't consider it to be knowledge. The next athar Khatib mentions is several pupils of Ibn Abbas. Many of his pupils, his talamid, they would report that Ibn Abbas used to say, قَيِّدُ الْعِلْمَ بِالْكِتَابِ خَيْرُ مَنْ قُيِّدَ بِهِ الْعِلْمُ الْكِتَابِ. He would say, preserve knowledge by writing it. The best way of preserving knowledge is writing it. Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said, Man yashtari minni ilman bi dirham. Who will spend a dirham and buy some knowledge from me? Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Who will spend a dirham and buy knowledge from me? قال أبو خيثمة يقول يشتري صحيفة بدرهم يكتب فيها العلم. Meaning buy some paper, buy a notebook, and write down a hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Now he talks about الصحف. تدوين الحديث في الصحف وتناقلها بين الشيوخ والتلاميذ. ولقد كانت هذه الصحف هي النواة الأولى لما صنف في القرنين الثاني والثالث من الجوامع والمسانيد والسنن وغيرهما. ومن أمثلة هذه الصحف ما يلي. So a suhuf is the plural of the word sahifa. And a sahifa is basically meaning a scroll. Someone's personal notes. Whether it's on one topic, one subject, or whether it's something which is random. So Sahaba, many of them, they had their own personal suhuf. Their own personal suhuf, their own personal books, scrolls of information. He says, and these scrolls here are the rough prototypes of the books in the 1st and 2nd century. They are the rough prototypes of the books of the 1st and 2nd century. So let's say, for example, you have a list of fawaid that you took from me in a class. Let's say they were 100 fa'idas. 100 fa'idas out of a 3-hour class. Then you took those 100 fa'idas and you kept it safe in your own personal diary. A long time went by. You passed away. Your daughter comes along. She discovers those notes. 100 fa'idas from my mother or from my father, from Muhammad ibn Muneer. And then you decided to publish those benefits and print them. But he said, no, that's not enough. It's too small. It's only 100. So let me compile other notes from his other students. And then next thing you know, you have a good amount of information. And then the next generation takes those notes that you typed up. And then they edit them and summarize them. Things are repetitive. She mentioned the same faida 3, 4, 5 times. And then you start to put it together. And then you have other teachers and other speakers. And the next thing you know, you have a compilation of benefits from speakers of Toronto. And that is a muwatta. That's what the muwatta is. Abu Bakr decided this should be done with this person who breaks this law. And this is a statement of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is the tafsir of Zayd ibn Thabit. But now, instead of it just being a compilation, it's now organized. Fawaid on tahara, fawaid on aqidah, fawaid on seeking ilm, fawaid on kada. And then the next person comes behind and he does even more service and sifts through it. No, that doesn't make sense. Muhammad, no, get rid of that. That's not really true. And he only compiles fawaid which are agreed upon by the ulama, which are proven by the Quran and the Sunnah, mathalan. And then now you have a jami' sahih. That is Sahih al-Bukhari now. Mathalan. Everybody understand this? How they evolved. Person's memory, person's personal notes, person's sahifa, and then the next generation taking it, expanding it, sifting through it, sophisticating it, summarizing it, tweaking it, and that's how 2nd century, 3rd century, and then you have the books now. Everybody understand this or not? And everything wasn't like this though. There were many hadiths that were memorized and passed down by memory, passed down orally and never written down. Everybody clear on this or not? Tayyib. He says here, first and foremost is the Sahifa of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu. Fihi faraidu sadaqah. Pertaining to the zakah, as we just mentioned. Anas radiyallahu anhu narrates, إن أبا بكر الصديق بعثه مصدقا وكتب له كتابا فيه فرائض الصدقة وعليه خاتم رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وفيه هذه فريضة الصدقة التي فرضها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم على المسلمين. الحديث بطوله. The first narration is reported by Anas radiyallahu anhu that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu sent Anas as a musaddiq, a tax agent, a tax collector. And he gave Anas a book. And in that book had the seal or the stamp of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, that is not forged. And in that book it said, this is the obligatory sadaqah, the mandatory sadaqah, yani zakah, the zakah, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has made incumbent upon the Muslims. And then afterwards he mentioned about camels, cows, bulls, goat, sheep, etc. How many animals, what are their ages, how much is due when you have a certain amount of animals of a certain age. Everybody clear on this or not? Do those animals graze? Is food brought to them, etc.? The details of zakah pertaining to livestock. Pertaining to what? Livestock. Tayyib. Says here in the footnotes, you can find this narration in Sahih al-Bukhari. Kitab al-Zakah. Bab al-Zakah says al-Ghanam. Kada. Tayyib. Moving forward. Number 2 is the famous Sahifa of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. أخرج الخطيب وابن عبد البر من عدة طرق عن علي بن أبي طالب أنه خطب الناس فقال من زعم أن عندنا شيئا نقرأه ليس في كتاب الله تعالى وهذه الصحيفة فقد كذب. قال الراوي عنه وكانت الصحيفة معلقة في سيفي وفيها أسنان الإبل وشيء من الجراحات وقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم المدينة حرم ما بين عير إلى ثور فمن أحدث فيها حدثا أو آوى محدثا فعليه لعنة الله والملائكة والناس أجمعين الحديث بطوله. This narration is reported or goes back to Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, in which Ali radiallahu anhu one day he gave a khutbah. He gave the khutbah to the people and he said, anyone who claims that we have some additional information, another source besides the kitab of Allah and besides what's in this sahifa, then he's a liar. Meaning he didn't have anything that was written down from the Prophet ﷺ of religious value besides what was in that sahifa. Naam. The sub-narrator says that the scroll was rolled up inside of the scabbard of his sword. Inside of the scabbard of his sword. Naam. And in the scroll, the following information was found. Number one, Asnanul Ibil. Asnanul Ibil, meaning the ages of camels. Meaning the zakat, as we just explained. Camels you have to pay zakat on them when they reach a certain age. And when they reach a certain age, there's a certain amount of zakat that you have to give. Naam. وَشَيْءٌ مِّنَ الْجِرَاحَاتِ. And also pertaining to ad-diyat and al-qisas, things like this. If you get into a fight with a Muslim and you wound that Muslim, you injure the Muslim's hand, how much do you have to pay? You put out a Muslim's eye, you knock out his tooth, you destroy something pertaining to his or her sexual organs and they can't have children anymore. You wound a Muslim's head. How deep is the wound? Is it a cut? Is it a nick? Is it a flesh wound? Does he need stitches? Is there an infection? Everybody understand this? We're talking about the rulings of the hudud and the diyat and the qisas. Injury. There's a detailed system. Everybody clear on this or not? You punched a Muslim and you did this to the side of his face. In the Islamic court, there's now a responsibility that you have, depending on how much damage you did to that Muslim. Everybody understand this? That was in that scroll. Also in that scroll was the statement of the Prophet ﷺ, Al-Madinatu Haram, that Medina is sacred, just like Mecca is sacred. Medina is a sacred city, just like Mecca is a sacred city. But not the entire city of Medina. It says from the hill of Ayr to the hill of Thawr. فَمَنْ أَحْدَثَ فِي حَدِثًا. So anyone who commits murder therein, or accomplices, or is an accomplice to a murderer, supports a murderer, a thief, someone of hadith, a major crime, then upon him is the curse of Allah, the curse of the angels, and the curse of all of men. So this is an example of the sahifa that Ali radiallahu anhu had during his time. Number 3, he says, Sahifat Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, al-ma'rufa bis-sahifat al-sadiqa. عن مجاهد قال أتيت عبد الله بن عمرو فتناولت صحيفة من تحت مفرشه فمنعني قلت ما كنت تمنعني شيئا قال هذه الصادقة هذه ما سمعت من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ليس بيني وبينه أحد. A third example is that which is called a صحيفة الصادقة, the truthful scroll. And that is the personal scroll of Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As. One day Mujahid ibn Jabr, the tabi'een, he was his disciple, his student. He says, I saw a scroll. It was under his pillow or his blanket, his mafrash. So I reached for it and he stopped me. He said, no, don't touch that. So Mujahid said, this is the first time that you ever stopped me from doing anything. You're my teacher. Why can't I pick up your notes? This is the first time that you've ever prevented me from grabbing something or reading something, He says, this is a sadiqah. This is a sadiqah. This is the truthful scroll, in which I heard the Messenger of Allah ﷺ directly. No one was between me and him. What's in this scroll is directly from the Prophet ﷺ's noble mouth. Everybody understand this? هذه الصحف الثلاث كلها كتبت في حياته صلى الله عليه وسلم وهناك غيرها كثير مما كتب في حياته صلى الله عليه وسلم. He says all 3 of these scrolls were written down, were recorded in the life of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, and there are many, many others as well. طيب. The most famous of them is that which is called As-Sahifatu Sahiha. As-Sahifatu Sahiha was reported from Hammam ibn Munabbih, from Abu Huraira radiallahu anhu. This scroll, walillah to this day exists in its entirety, as it originally was, the whole entire thing. And the scroll can also be found completely in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad. And the hadith can also, the scroll, a good number of hadiths, can be found in other books of hadith as well. So when you're reading Sahih Bukhari, and you read the isnad that goes back to Mathalan Abdul Razak, going back to Ma'mar, going back to Hammam, going back to Abu Huraira, then that's what? That's this Sahifa. And Imam Muslim had a specific usloob. He mentioned it, and Bukhari is different. We don't have time to get into those details right now. Khairan, inshaAllah. So therefore, that's with regards to as-suhuf. Tayyib. Now we move forward to, the author says, Juhud al-tabi'een fi tadween as-sunnah al-musharrafa. What did the tabi'een do with regards to the tadween of the sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam? The things that they did, the steps that were taken with regards to memorization and with regards to actual documentation of the sunnah. The author, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, تلقى التابعون رحمهم الله تعالى السنة بل الدين كله عن الصحابة الكرام رضوان الله عليهم فقاموا بمهمة تبليغ الرسالة من بعد شيوخهم إلى الناس كافة فكانوا خير جيل بعد ذلك الجيل وقد بذل جيل التابعين في خدمة السنة وتدوينها وحفظها جهودا كبيرة وفيما يلي نماذج من تلك الجهود. He says the tabi'un, may Allah have mercy upon them, they took the sunnah from the noble companions. Rather, they took the entire deen, the Quran and the sunnah. And they inherited this task after their teachers. The Sahaba had a job, the Sahaba passed, the tabi'een came, and they carried out that job. They fulfilled that mission. The best generation after that of the Sahaba was that of the tabi'een. And they put forth a great deal of effort in doing so and preserving the hadith of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. The first point he mentions, he says, Al-hathu al-iltizam as-sunnah wa hifdhiha wa kitabatiha wa tathabbuti fi riwayatiha wa sama'iha. Like we previously mentioned and explained, is they encourage their followers, their students, to stick to the sunnah, to implement it. And also to memorize it. And also to write it down. And also to listen to it. We previously mentioned this, already. Naam. An example of them encouraging others to write. روى الخطيب في سنده من عدة طرق عن الإمام عامر الشعبي أنه كان يقول إذا سمعت شيء فاكتب ولو في الحائط فهو خير لك من موضعه من الصحيفة فأنك تحتاج إليه يوما ما. He says, whenever you hear something, then write it down, even if you have to write it on the wall. Even if you have to write it on the wall, Islamic graffiti, Even if you have to write it on the wall. And to my Khalid, even if you have to do what? Write it on the wall. He says it's best for you to write it on the wall than it to remain in the book and you don't have access to it anymore. عن الحسن البصري أنه قال ما قيد العلم بمثل الكتاب إنما نكتبه لنتعاهده. Hassan al-Basri said the best way of preserving it is writing it down. And we write it down so we can always practice it and go back to it. Just like some of the Sahaba said. Last but not least, the last example that we'll mention is that of Sa'id ibn Jubair, the disciple of Ibn Abbas. He said, كنت أكتب عند ابن عباس في صحيفتي حتى أملأها ثم أكتب في ظهر نعلي ثم أكتب في كفي. He says, when I was studying with Ibn Abbas, I would write until I had no more space in my sahifa, my scroll. He says, then I would write it down, he says, في ظهر نعلي, on top of my sandals. And if I didn't have any more space on my shoes, I would write it on my hand. I would write it on my hand. طيب. As we said yesterday, many of the efforts of the tabi'een, many of them, not all of them, but many of them are no more than the efforts of the Sahaba, but they were intensified. They were intensified. When the Sahaba began to pass away, they began to die. They were fewer in number, more scarce. The tabi'een began to do more of what they were already doing, of writing down, etc. People became weaker, more innovations. We explained all of that yesterday. Now, طيب. Now he mentioned some of the suhuf that existed in the time of the tabi'een from the Sahaba. Not the suhuf of the Sahaba from the Prophet, but the suhuf from the tabi'een from the Sahaba. صحيفة أو صحف سعيد بن جبير تلميذ ابن عباس، صحيفة بشير أو بشير بن نهيك كتبها عن أبي هريرة وغيره، صحيفة مجاهد بن جابر تلميذ ابن عباس قال أبو يحيى الكناسي كان مجاهد يصعد بي إلى غرفته فيخرج إلي كتبه فأنسخ منها. صحيفة أبي الزبير محمد بن مسلم بن تدرس المكي تلميذ جابر بن عبد الله، صحيفة زيد بن أبي أنيسة الرهاوي، صحيفة أبي قلابة، صحيفة أيوب بن أبي تميمة السختياني، صحيفة هشام بن عروة بن الزبير. These are names of tabi'een who had written down hadiths from the Sahaba and they had them preserved. What happened to those scrolls? What happened to those books? They were later on what? Annexed into the actual books, to the actual books. So let's make an example of this. You read a hadith in Sahih Muslim, in which Imam Muslim quotes his isnad that goes back to Sa'id ibn Jubair, that goes back to Abdullah ibn Abbas, that goes back to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. A big, a very probable, very high possibility is that that narration from Sa'id ibn Jubair, the narrator from Sa'id ibn Jubair is taking it from his what? From his sahifa. Whether it was on paper or whether he studied with Sa'id ibn Jubair and he got it from him, from Ibn Abbas, from the Prophet. Everybody understand this? Because they say, where are these early books? And then later on, where did the books go? They didn't just dissolve into thin air. They dissolved but not into thin air. They were either destroyed or lost, but they were preserved through memory or preserved through being annexed into a bigger book. Like we made the example of the notes. The example of the what? Of the notes. Everybody clear on this or not? Everybody understand this? طيب. Now he talks specifically about a highlighting point of this generation. And that highlighting point is the efforts of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz and Az-Zuhri. This is considered to be a jump, a leap from among the major steps that were being taken. Umar ibn Abdul Aziz was who? He was the Khalifa. Who was he? What was his lineage? Related to Umar ibn Khattab? What was the lineage of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz? The grandson of who? Of Umar. Everybody agree on this? طيب. Az-Zuhri was who? What was his lineage? So who was Abdul Aziz? It's a serious question. Who was Abdul Aziz? Ibn Abdullah ibn Umar ibn Khattab? So is the grandson or great-grandson? كيف? How? طيب. Guys, go back and read about Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, طيب, he says here جهودهما رحمهم الله تعالى رضي الله عنهما في نشر السنة بقمع البدعة قولا وفعلا أشهر من أن تذكر في هذا المقام. ولتراجع أنت ترجمتيهما في سير أعلام النبلاء وغيره. أخرج البخاري في صحيح عن عبد الله بن دينار قال كتب عمر بن عبد العزيز إلى أبي بكر بن حزم انظر ما كان من حديث رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فاكتبه فإني خفت دروس العلم وذهاب العلماء ولا تقبل إلا حديث النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ولتفشوا العلم ولتجلسوا حتى يعلم من لا يعلم فإن العلم لا يهلك حتى يكون سرا. He says the efforts of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz and Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri pertaining to spreading the sunnah, teaching the sunnah, and stifling bid'ah, says they're well known. Well known for them to be mentioned here right now in this quick brief work. If you want to read about what they did and their efforts, then go back to Siyar Alam al-Nubala. He mentions the asal of this is the hadith in Sahih Bukhari that one day Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he wrote to Abu Bakr ibn Hazm. Who was Abu Bakr ibn Hazm? Abu Bakr ibn Hazm was who? Very important figure here. 5th century? What year was Umar ibn Aziz living in? Kaif? How could Umar ibn Abdul Aziz write him something in the 5th century? That can't be right. Khalid, man Abu Bakr ibn Hazm. Fiqh, Qira'ah, Hadith. What lineage does he come from? Anybody know? طيب, let's go. Go on Wikipedia right now. Find Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, and Abu Bakr ibn Hazm. So he said to him, Unzur. He says, I want you to do me a favor. I'm sending you on a mission. That mission or that favor is to gather all of the hadiths of the Prophet ﷺ and write them down in one place. And that is because I'm afraid that knowledge will be lost. And I'm afraid that the people of knowledge will all go away. They'll all die. And only record what the Prophet ﷺ said and did. And then spread that knowledge. And sit down and make yourselves available for everyone to learn. Why? Because knowledge will never be destroyed until it's secret. That's a golden principle right there. Knowledge will be destroyed when it becomes secret, or when it becomes based off of who you are. When only aristocrats get knowledge, nobles, and the general people, the low-born people, are no longer welcomed and accepted in the circles. That's when knowledge will be destroyed. Everybody understand this? When it's only kept within a small what? Small circle, without the proper circulation. وعن ابن شهاب الزهري أنه قال أمرنا عمر بن عبد العزيز بجمع السنن فكتبناها دفترا فبعث إلى كل أرض له عليها سلطان دفترا. Zuhri, he said that Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he commanded us to gather all of the hadiths. So we took the narrations and we wrote them down book by book, notebook by notebook, journal by journal. And then Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, after we had compiled it for him, he sent a standardized copy to every city, every village, every country in which he was in charge. This is similar to the process of what? Without a question. It's similar to the process of standardizing the Mus'haf, canonizing the Quran. Everybody understand this? This is the standard what? Canon now. Burn the other ones. Methanan. Everybody understand this? Similar process. The Quran was there in the hearts of men, of course, written down in certain places. Uthman, he commanded for it to be what? To be what? And put together, and then after it was compiled, he commanded for it to be what? Standardized. Standardized. This is it. Everybody clear on this or not? Khairan inshallah. The fourth example, he says, روى الدارمي بسنده أن عمر بن عبد العزيز كتب إلى أهل المدينة: انظروا حديث رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فاكتبوه فإني خفت دروس العلم وذهاب أهله. وروى الخطيب بسنده إلى الزهري أنه قال: لولا أحاديث تأتينا من قبل المشرق ننكرها لا نعرفها ما كتبت حديثا ولا أذنت في كتابه. طيب, المهم, he mentions the athar here to show that from the people that had a great amount of service in this process, number one was Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, and number two was Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri. And this goes to show you is that for there to be knowledge, there has to be money. There has to be safety. There has to be protection. Oftentimes, scholarship, Islamic scholarship, and politics go hand in hand. Force, power, and protection of the authorities for there to be proper Islamic research. Everybody clear on this or not? They worked together. They worked what? They worked together. So with Zuhri, rahimahullah ta'ala, what he did was nothing special. He did what the other tabi'een were doing. However, he had a specific royal command. He had a royal what? A royal command to do this. He had a higher authority now. Funding, resources. It was a bit different now. He had no restrictions. Everybody clear on this? There was nothing to get in his way of going here, going there, compiling this, summoning this scholar, bringing this person, and putting it in one place. Everybody understand this or not? Everybody clear on this? Funding, money, resources. And Az-Zuhri, rahimahullah ta'ala, we know that he himself was a great scholar. He himself was a very erudite student of Hadith. And he had a command from the sovereign to carry out this task. Moving forward, he says here, وَلَعَلَّ الْمُرَادَ بِهَذَا التَّدْوِينِ الشَّامِلِ الذي بدأه فعلا الزهري بأمر الخليفة عمر بن عبد العزيز. وقد سبق أن ذكرنا أن الحافظ الخطيب البغدادي قد حرر هذا الموضوع إلى آخره وأثبت بالأدلة أن التدوين لم يكن ذلك بشمول واستقصاء. طيب, what's important is that we don't have the time to go into details of exactly what Umar ibn Abdul Aziz and Az-Zuhri had did. What is sufficient for us to know one of the most important things that happened in the time of the tabi'een, the generation directly after the Sahaba, was the cooperation of these two, the Khalifa and his great scholar. The Khalifa of the Muslims at the time, Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, and one of, but one of the greatest scholars of the time was Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, rahimahullah. With regards to taking what was memorized, taking what was written down, taking what was sporadically documented, and standardizing it. Everybody clear on this? And putting it all together on paper. Obviously, that's going to lead to a very big step and a very important step, and that is Al-Qarn al-Thani al-Hijri, the 2nd century, in which most of the tabi'een had died off, or a large number of them had died off. And now we have the atba', the students of the tabi'een. Those who didn't meet the Sahaba, they hadn't come across the Sahaba, but they met their students directly. And this generation, they carried the baton, quote unquote. They did exactly what the previous generation had did, but they had intensified their efforts and they began to sophisticate their efforts. Now they were actually writing books. Books, an actual book now. Not just suhuf, not just tadween, not just kitaba, but an actual mu'allaf now. Everybody clear on this? Khairan, inshallah. I believe it's time for Salat al-Asr. Inshallah, we'll stop here. Bidnillah. Give brothers and sisters time to refresh themselves. Someone may need to make wudu or something like this. And we will continue bidnillah ta'ala shortly after Salat al-Asr.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد
the 2nd century of the Hijrah. طيب. The author says, يشمل هذا القرن عصر جيلين. He says that this time period includes 2 generations. الأول صغار التابعين إذ تأخرت وفاة بعضهم إلى ما بعد سنة 140 وقد سبق الكلام عن أثرهم وجهودهم في التدوين ضمن الكلام عن جهود جيل التابعين كله بمختلف طبقاته. The first is the generation of the صغار التابعين. The صغار التابعين. A tabi'i being a Muslim who met one of the companions of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ and studied with them. And obviously the Sahaba have different levels with regards to age, with regards to knowledge and virtue, and with regards to when they had accepted Islam. And the tabi'een also, they have levels among them. They're from the tabi'een who met 20 companions, 30 companions, 50 companions, 70 companions, who lived with the companions for many years, fought battles with them, and were trained and nurtured by the Sahaba for a long time. And then there are those who only met 10 companions, 15 companions. Some of those who met only 5 Sahaba. Some of the tabi'een who only met 1 or 2 companions, and they only have studied with them briefly. Or they may have studied with one companion for some period of time. So the tabi'un, they are of different levels. We have the kibar tabi'een, as we said, those who met a good amount of companions. And they were masters of ilm. They studied with the Sahaba for a very long time. And they met kibar Sahaba, they met big Sahaba, elder Sahaba, prominent Sahaba. And then we have the tabi'een who are in the middle. They don't have a poor low rank, nor do they have the highest rank. And then we have the sigar tabi'een, the young tabi'een, who met only a few companions, if that. And he says many of them, they died later on, after the year 150, 140, 150, 160. That's late. That's a late time. That's a long time after the Sahaba and the tabi'een went away. Tayyib. He says, so we previously explained about the tabi'een and what they did. The tabi'een and what they did, regardless of their levels, all 3 levels. We talked about that. How they traveled, how they asked about the isnad, they criticized the narrators, how they wrote down things, how they memorized things. Naam? We explained that, naam? We explained that. He says, أما الجيل الثاني فهم أتباع تابعين. الحلقة الثالثة بعد جيل الصحابة والتابعين في سلسلة رواة السنة ونقلة الدين إلى الأمة. ولقد كان لهذا الجيل أثره الرائد في التصدي لأصحاب البدع والأهواء ومقاومة الكذب الذي فشى في هذا العصر على أيدي الزنادقة الذين بلغوا ذروة نشاطهم ضد السنة ورواتها في منتصف هذا القرن. حتى اضطر الخليفة المهدي رحمه الله إلى تكليف أحد رجاله بتتبع أخبارهم والتضييق عليهم في أوكارهم. فأصبح ذلك الرجل يعرف بصاحب الزنادقة. He says, now we have the followers of the tabi'een, people that hadn't met one companion, no companions they met. They were students, they were disciples, they were pupils of the tabi'un, It's a very simple concept. You have your mother, you have your grandmother, you have your great-grandmother. Naam? If your parents come from another country, they migrated from another country. You say, I'm the first generation here in Canada from my original country. Naam? And then you have a son. You get married, you have a son. That is your mother's grandson. He is a 2nd generation Canadian. Everybody clear on this? Obviously his life, your life, is going to be a bit different than that of your mother or your father. You are born and raised in Canada. Native speaking, your culture, your mindset, your values, your ideals, hygiene, all of these things are very different than those who come from another country. Everybody clear on this? So we have the Sahaba, then we have those who came after the Sahaba, and then we have those who are students of those who met the Sahaba. Atba' tabi'een. He says, and this here is when everything started getting very, very exciting. This when things became very exciting in this generation. For the good and for the bad. It was all for the good but the positivity and the negativity. The amount of efforts, the books, the suhuf, all of those things that were compressed and put together. And also the people beginning to lie. And the people of innovations beginning to come about. The people who were zanadiqa, people who were never Muslim, had only entered into Islam, faking it, lying, pretending to be Muslims. They became very strong during this century or during this generation. طيب, moving forward. وقد نشط الأئمة والعلماء في هذا الجيل في خدمة السنة وعلومها وحمايتها من كل ما يشوبها، وعلى أيديهم بدأ التدوين الشامل المبوب المرتب بعد أن كان من قبلهم بجمع الأحاديث المختلفة في الصحف والكراريس بشكل محدود وكيفما اتفق بدون تبويب ولا ترتيب. He says, and in this generation the word tadween began to come to life. The word compilation or conservation began to come to what? To life, in which it wasn't no longer just gathering and compiling. But now it says mubawab and murattab. It was now arranged. It was now put in order. Before they put together whatever they could. One line is what the Prophet said, then it's what Umar said. Here is Abu Bakr as-Siddiq next to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. All of the athar together. If you had a room full of books, a room full of what? Full of books. So your own personal library. Your own personal library. You have books of fiction, you have an atlas, you have an almanac, you have a dictionary, you have Islamic books, you have this book, so on, just books. But then someone comes along, and then it said there's too many books, it's cluttered and crowded. This is the Islamic section. This is a section for non-Islamic books which are of non-fiction. This is the encyclopedia section. And you start breaking it down and categorizing it, and then looking after it. And you have so many books, now you make your own catalog system. You write the numbers and the letters on the spine of the book. That's what happened during this century. Everybody clear on this? The books were put together, the books were put on the shelf, they were stacked up and compiled when? Before Al-Qarn al-Thani, the second century. Now and then during this century, they began to sift through those books now and organize them and arrange them. And books appeared in which there were just statements of the Prophet excluded from statements of the Sahaba. And they had books or sections and chapters in which is the verdicts, the fatwa of the Sahaba, not mixed with those of the Prophet ﷺ. Everybody clear on this? He then says here, كما نشأ تفتق على أيديهم علم الرجال بعد أن كان السؤال عن الإسناد قد بدأ في أواخر عصر الصحابة وكبار التابعين. Another highlighting feature of this generation was علم الرجال, biographical evaluation, the science of men. The narrators, looking into them, criticizing them, became organized. They became organized now. The Sahaba occasionally asked about narrators. The tabi'een, as we mentioned, they asked about narrators much on a larger scale. But during this time period, Ilm al-Rijal began to flourish. It began to become an organized science. كما كان لهذا الجيل الريادة في ابتداء تدوين المرتب على الأبواب والفصول. ويعتبر هذا الجيل جيل التأسيس لعلوم السنة المطهرة. طيب. Moving forward. What evolved during this generation? The author says, أولا تطور التدوين في هذا القرن عما سبق ظهور التفريق بين التدوين الذي هو مجرد الجمع وبين التصنيف الذي هو الترتيب والتبويب والتمييز. We just explained that. Also we have the statements of the Sahaba and the tabi'een were now being put together in documentation. Before they were well known, they were passed down. Now they actually wrote them down as well. طيب. From the ulama who wrote books during this century were the following. Number one, before we get into those names, The titles of the books that were written during this century were called muwatta. Scholars wrote books of hadith and also of athar of Sahaba, which they called muwatta, like Muwatta Malik. Malik wasn't the only one who had a book that was called muwatta. Others had named that book as well, muwatta. We also had al-musannaf, and we also had jami', and we also had sunan. And there were other books that were written that were about specific topics, such as al-jihad. He wrote a book just on al-jihad, and a hadith on jihad, the virtues of jihad, etc. Some, during this century, they wrote books called az-zuhd, kitab az-zuhd, the book pertaining to heart-softening, heart-melting narrations, divorcing the worldly life, not indulging in the worldly life, qiyamah, the grave, this will happen, this will take place, tawbah, the stories of the people of the past, and they called it az-zuhd, kitab az-zuhd. And we also had al-maghazi wa siyar, the seerah of this Imam, Ibn Ishaq, mathalan, kitab al-sirah. From those who wrote musannafs during this generation, first and foremost was Abu Muhammad Abdul Malik ibn Abdul Aziz ibn Jurayj. Abdul Aziz, or Abdul Malik ibn Abdul Aziz, his name in short is Ibn Jurayj. It's a household name, Ibn Jurayj. He died 150, and he was in Mecca. He was from the major ulama who wrote books in Mecca during the 2nd century. So if he died in 150, that means he lived a little bit of the what? La, of course, aywa, before the 2nd century. Naam. And then we also have Muhammad ibn Ishaq, who we just mentioned, regarding Sirah, famous about the Sirah. Muhammad ibn Ishaq ibn Yasar al-Matlabi or al-Muttalabi, who died 151. He was in Medina. And then we have Ma'mar ibn Rashid al-Basri, al-San'ani. He was from Basra, but then he migrated to Yemen. He died 153. He wrote a musannaf. He wrote a book during this generation, during this century. Then we have Sa'id ibn Abi Aruba. Sa'id ibn Abi Aruba, who died 156 of the Hijrah, and he was in Basra. And Basra obviously is in Iraq. Abu Amr, Abdurrahman ibn Amr al-Awza'i, who died 156 as well. And he was in Sham, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, etc. So we see how it's spread out now. The geographical spread. Everybody understand this? Mecca, Medina, Iraq, Sham, Yemen. Naam. Muhammad ibn Abdurrahman ibn Abi Dhib, who's commonly known as Ibn Abi Dhib, a contemporary of who? He was a contemporary of who? Famous Imam. He lived in Medina, and he died in the year 158. And then we have Al-Rabi' ibn Sabih al-Basri, died 160. Shu'bah ibn Hajjaj, died 160 in Basra, Iraq. Abu Abdullah Sufyan ibn Sa'id al-Thawri, died 161, the famous Sufyan al-Thawri, he was in Kufa. Layth ibn Sa'd al-Fahmi, 175 in Egypt. Al-Imam Malik ibn Anas, 179 in Medina. Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak, 181 in Khurasan, in the lands of Persia, Afghanistan, Iran, Naam. Jarir ibn Abdul Hamid al-Dabbi, he died 188, see, now towards the end of the century now. And he was in Ray, and Ray is modern day Tehran. Abdullah ibn Wahab al-Misri, 197, was also in Egypt. Sufyan ibn Uyayna, 198, was in Mecca. Waqi ibn al-Jarrah al-Rasi, 197, in Kufa. Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi'i, 204, which is actually outside of the 2nd century, but the majority of his life was during the 2nd century, and we know he was in Egypt. Abdul Razak ibn Hammam al-San'ani was in Sana'a in Yemen, 211. So this is a brief list of scholars who all had written books during this what? Qarn, during this century. Where are those books? Can you go to the bookstore now and say, give me the Musannaf of Sufyan ibn Uyayna? Give me the Musannaf of Jarir ibn Abdul Hamid. Give me the Musannaf of Sufyan al-Thawri. Give me the Jami' of this one or that one. 9 out of 10 you can't find. So what happened to their works? Their works were what? They were what? They were preserved and lost, both. The actual original book was lost, burnt, damaged, stolen, destroyed by the Mongols, whatever. But the information of the book was put into what? The bigger books. So think about it. Every time you read in Sahih Bukhari, he narrates from Sufyan ibn Uyayna, that's his book. Everybody clear on this? Every time you find Jarir ibn Abdul Hamid and Musnad Imam Ahmad, that's from his what? It's from his book that was lost, but at the same time it was preserved. Everybody clear on this? Everybody understand this? Everybody clear on this? Everybody got me or not? Everybody with me? Tayyib. Moving forward. He says, out of all of these scholars, one of the books that survived in its entirety, and one of the most thorough of those books, and one of the most famous of those books, was the book of Imam Malik. The book of Imam Malik. Imam Malik was fortunate enough to have his book survive cover to cover, let alone being annexed into other books as well. When you find Imam Muslim narrating from the Tariq Malik, and the Hadith he says, وَأَخْرَجَهُ Malik, as well. Everybody understand this? Now he's going to do a brief study of Imam Malik and a brief study of his book. Tayyib. We have a volunteer reader, inshallah. Fadal Ikram.
المؤلف أبو عبد الله مالك بن أنس الأصبحي إمام دار الهجرة بل إمام المسلمين في زمانه فالذهبي الإمام الحافظ
قال الذهبي
الإمام الحافظ فقيه الأمة شيخ الإسلام.
Tayyib. First of all, who is Imam Malik? His kunya was Abu Abdullah, the father of Abdullah. His actual name was Malik, the son of Anas. Al-Asbahi. Al-Asbahi. And he was the Imam, or his title was the Imam of Darul Hijrah, meaning the Imam of Medina. During his time, he was the Imam of the Muslims. We all know Imam Malik. His life story, his biography is well known. And if you don't know about Imam Malik, or even if you do, you should read about his life. Just like a student of knowledge and a student of Hadith should read about all of the Imams of the Hadith. And there are countless benefits in you reading about the Imams of Hadith. Countless benefits. From the greatest of those benefits is to realize you're not the only one to struggle and to suffer. You're not the only one to go through a hardship. There were Imams that were beaten, locked up, accused of things. There were Imams that were banished from their countries. There were Imams who lost wealth, lost their property. There were Imams who suffered for the sake of knowledge and Hadith. So if you realize that this great Imam who lived in that wonderful time, and he read the Quran like this, he fasted like that, he made Hajj like this every year, he did this with his mother, he would scrub his mother's feet and bring her fresh milk every morning and so on, all of the stuff that he did, and he still went through those trials and tribulations, then what about me? Am I the most righteous? Am I the most righteous son to my mother? Am I the most pious person? You can reflect. And even if that isn't the case, you can reflect and relate to someone else's struggles. And you realize and you get the idea is that al-ibtila is the sunnah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Test and trial is the way of Allah with his righteous slaves. And you also benefit from reading from the lives of the Imams of Hadith. And you learn humility and humbleness. You learn how to humble yourself. You memorize a few Hadiths. You go overseas. You learn a few fancy words to say in Arabic. And you start thinking like, I'm the best. I'm better than everybody else. Or I'm pretty good, I sound pretty good. You lead the salat, you give the khutbah, you start, becoming full of yourself. Read about Imam Malik, read about this one, read about that one. What he memorized, what he studied, what he wrote, how quick it took him to do this. And you say, I really don't have that much at all. I really don't have that much at all. Another fact that you get about reading about the Imams of Hadith is that you get inspiration. When you become rusty, or you become depressed, or you become down, or you become bored, or if you lose your steam, you need to what? Rejuvenate yourself. Everybody understand this? You need a jolt. And you get that raw juice from reading about the Imams of Hadith and what they did and how they, etc. And there are many, many other benefits as well. So that's Imam Malik in brief. The question is now, لِمَاذَا سُمِّيَ كِتَابُهُ بِالْمُوَطَّأ? Why did he call his book Muwatta? Why isn't his book called Musannaf Malik? Or Jami' Malik? Or Sunan Malik? Why is it called Muwatta? Firstly, it says, لأنه وطأ به الحديث أي يسره للناس. Because the word muwatta means that which has been facilitated, that which has been made easy, linguistically. So Imam Malik, he made his book easy and simple for the people. He laid it out, he organized it, he arranged it, he made it simple and easy for the people to take. And the second meaning or wisdom behind his book being called Al-Muwatta, which is also a linguistic, he says, لِمُوَاطَعَةِ عُلَمَاءِ الْمَدِينَةِ لَهُ فِيهِ وَمُوَافَقَتِهِمْ عَلَيْهِ. Is that word muwatta coming from wata'a, yuwati'u, at-tawatu', meaning that the scholars of Medina agreed with him. They agreed with him. Their views and opinions coincided with his. استحسنوا كتابه. They thought that his book was a good thing, an excellent thing. قال الإمام مالك عرضت كتابي هذا على 70 فقيها من فقهاء المدينة فكلهم واطأني عليه فسميته الموطأ. He says, I presented my book to 70 fuqaha of Medina, and all of them said it's an excellent book. What is Imam Malik's book about? اشتمل على حديث الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم وأقوال الصحابة وفتاوى التابعين وقد انتقاه من 100,000 حديث كان يرويها. Imam Malik's book includes 3 types of narrations. Number 1, the hadiths of the messenger. Number 2, the statements of the Sahaba. And number 3, the fatwa of the tabi'een. And Imam Malik, he selected these narrations from over 100,000 hadiths that he had knew. 100,000 hadiths that he was narrating and he knew, he made a selection. How many hadiths can be found in the book of Imam Malik? First and foremost is we have different riwayat. We have that which is called riwayat al-Muwatta, meaning that Imam Malik had students and he taught his book to his students. And from time to time, Malik would change his book. He would alter it, take something out, put something in. A student would leave, go back to his country, come back, he would come back, etc. And he taught it for many, many years. So he had different students who took from him different versions of his book, different riwayat of his book. Hishan, the book that you have of mine, you make a photocopy of that. I die, I pass on, and you say this book needs to be printed. And then you find another version of that book with another student of mine in America that's a bit different, a bit thicker, a bit thinner. He's lying, I have the copy. No, it's just that I had different, and they took the book from me at different times. So he says here, first and foremost is the riwayah, the version of Yahya ibn Yahya al-Andalusi that has 853 hadiths. 853 hadiths. Roughly, it says here, 1,722 reports. طيب. he mentions the reason why there's discrepancy in the number of hadiths in the Muwatta Malik, as we just explained. Try it. Skip that for now. The ulama who looked after his book, the shuruhat. First and foremost is al-istidhkar, which should have been mentioned after a tamheed. A tamheed is the asl. Istidhkar is the summary of a tamheed. Many scholars explain the Muwatta of Imam Malik, many of them. From the most famous, if not the most famous and the most beneficial of those explanations, is that of Ibn Abdul Barr, rahimahullah, of the 5th century. And he wrote a book called At-Tamheed, لما في الموطأ من المعاني والأسانيد. It's printed in over 30 volumes now. And then later on he made a summarized version of the book called Al-Istidhkar. طيب. That's the brief study of the Muwatta of Malik. And after that, the author jumps to the 3rd century. He jumps to the what? The 3rd century, which is considered to be the most important century. So let's make a brief review before we move forward, brothers and sisters. Let's start off with just one brother or one sister that can give me a summary of the whole entire chronological history of the compilation of the Sunnah. The whole thing. The whole entire thing. The whole thing. Simple summary. Any volunteers? Tayyip, okay, no problem. How about, what is the Quranic position on the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What's the status of the Sunnah through the Quran? What are the points of the Quran regarding the Sunnah? The Quran affirms that that Muhammad's statements and actions are wahi. Muhammad is to be obeyed, followed. Same thing. What else do we learn from the Quran? Quickly. That it is of authority. Keep moving, come on. The Prophet is an example, a role model. Moving forward. Quickly. From the jobs of the messenger is to explain. Keep moving. It should be spread. Perhaps something specific though that we mentioned from the Quran. It's more. The Quran warns those who disobey the Prophet. Same thing. He warns those who disobey the Prophet. We mentioned that. What else? All right, Tayyip. The status of the Sunnah in the Sunnah. The status of the Sunnah in the Sunnah. The Hadiths of the Prophet teach us the following points. Number 1. There's no difference between Muhammad's ruling and Allah's ruling. We explained that. We what? We explained that. Number 2. The Hadiths teach us about the Sunnah what? Explanation. The Hadiths teach us that there is explanation of the things in the Quran. Number 3. The Hadith teach us is that there will be people who will come and say, only give us the Quran. Number 4. The Hadith teach us about the Sunnah is what? We'll be going over this in detail. Khalid, شرحنا هذا. بذلنا جهد في هذا الشيء. Number 5. Asad. What else? طيب, moving forward. The status of the Sunnah according to the Sahaba and the tabi'een. Number one. First point. What do we learn from what the Sahaba said and did? We went over this yesterday in detail. No. The status of the Sunnah. The status of the Sunnah. Not how they preserved it. Nah, that's not it. No. Those are the efforts. We're talking about what was their attitude and mindset pertaining to Hadith and Sunnah. That's their efforts. It's all juhud. No, that's their efforts. They were rough and harsh against those who rejected the hadiths. They did not agree with those who said that we only need the Quran. مثلا. هكذا. What we mentioned about the stances of the Sahaba and the tabi'een pertaining to the status of the Sunnah. Another point will be what? The tabi'een and the Sahaba, they considered the Sunnah to be no revelation. كان ينزل عليه بالسنة كما ينزل عليه بالقرآن. Hassan ibn Atiyah, we mentioned that. Also, some of them said that the Sunnah, with certain aspects, was what? Superior with regards to legislation. وهكذا. Everybody got the point now? We mentioned all of that yesterday. Tayyib, next point. What were some of the positions of the people of desires and innovations regarding the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ and its authority? That the Sunnah is all made up. It's not authentic. Number two. It wasn't documented until after hundreds of years after the Prophet's death. Other things as well. That's good. They've talked about the narrators of Hadith without any proof. Attacked them, slandered them. Said they were this and they were that. Number four. They claimed that it went against the Quran. They clashed with the Quran. وهكذا. نعم. We explained that. نعم. طيب. What were some of the efforts of the Sahaba to conserve the Sunnah during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ? First one was what? To look at the Prophet, pay attention. Number two, ittiba, to follow it, act upon it. Number three, they passed it to others that didn't have the ability to sit in the Prophet's company himself. Number four, jazakallahu khairan. They what? They wrote it down during his lifetime. Labas. Adi Hussein. Malik. Tayyib. What else? During the time of the Prophet? Tayyib. Anything else? All right. Next generation. After the Prophet ﷺ had left them, what did they do? They traveled. Why did they travel? To double check what they had first and foremost. Seek that which they didn't have. A companion is alive in Egypt. I'm in Medina. I want to hear a hadith from him. Tayyib. What else did they do? They made tathabbut. They started to double check. What else did they do? Spread it. They spread it by traveling, or people traveled to them? What did we say? People traveled to them. Khairan, inshallah. Also, some of them may have went to certain lands to teach the Quran, teach the Hadith, etc. Okay, tayyib. Efforts of the tabi'een. They wrote it down just like but on a larger scale. Tayyib. What else did they do? They traveled just like the companions did, but on a high level and for different reasons. For different what? Different reasons. Different what? Different reasons. The tabi'een traveled not for the same reasons that the Sahaba traveled. There was no hadith that he wanted to double check because he never heard hadith from the Prophet anyhow. Everybody clear on this? What other reasons did they travel? To verify there are other reasons as well. To spread and to diversify, to circulate it. Tayyib, where were some of the most important places they traveled? First, Iraq, first and foremost. All of the cities of Iraq. Number 2, Yemen, Sham, Misr, Hijaz, وهكذا. Tayyib, who was Daniel? Who did the homework assignment? Who was Daniel? Who was he? A prophet. Tayyib, tell us more about this prophet. Bismillah, it's a homework assignment. Seen on a kid's cartoon from YouTube. It can be a dalil. A kid's cartoon on YouTube can be a source. Push come to shove, huh? Push come to what? Push come to shove, huh? Don't scorn any source of knowledge, huh? Tayyib, I'm listening. Bismillah. You researched it or you just saw the cartoon? Because the homework assignment was to look for it. Mahdi, kalas, too late, akhi. Kalas, too late, huh? It's too late to Google it now. I'm all ears. Who was Daniel?
All I just got was that he was a prophet.
A prophet. Anyone did the homework? Who was Daniel? Who was Daniel?
It was taken from the Israelites that he was a prophet.
Taken from the Israelites. So do we affirm his prophecy or not? We don't.
Because Allah, it was not mentioned in the Quran.
Okay, so he wasn't a prophet or he was? Which one? Or people claim that he was a prophet? It's my question. I want to know. Some people say that he was a what? Prophet. What other homework assignments do we have? Huh? Moving forward. Let's move forward. What are some of the etiquettes of rihla fi talab al-hadith? Istidhan al-walidain. You have to be serious where? In your own locale. What else? Khairan, inshallah. Let's move forward. Name 3 companions who had suhuf. 3 companions who were famous for having sahifas. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. Ali ibn Abi Talib. La. Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As. What was the name of the sahif of Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As? As-Sadiqa. Okay. 3 tabi'een who had suhuf. Sa'id ibn Jubair. That's a freebie. Number 2. وهكذا. Everybody understand this? Khairan, inshallah. All right. So, now after we just ran through that briefly, I know there's a few things that we missed out on. Once more, question is, what happened to those earlier books of hadith? Those suhuf and those kutub and those jawami, what happened to them? The question is, pay attention to the question. Were those books lost? Yes or no? Yes, they were. They were lost. From one aspect, they were what? Most of them. With exceptions to the Jami' of Ma'mar, the Muwatta of Malik, most of them were lost. Were they preserved from another aspect? Yes. How were they preserved? By being annexed into the bigger books. So when you find Sufyan al-Thawri, Ma'mar ibn Rashid, Waqi ibn al-Jarrah, and the hadith is talking about zuhd, for example. On the day of judgment, the hellfire will be brought forth. On the day of judgment, it will be said to the person who had wealth. On the day of judgment, the poor person will be brought forth, so on and so on and so forth. A big possibility is that was originally in the book of Waqi on zuhd. Or if you read a hadith from Jarir ibn Abdul Hamid, his tariq, that goes back to the Prophet about jihad, that could have been in his book on hakadha. Everybody understand this? طيب, khairan inshallah. Next question. Were the hadiths written in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, yes or no? Yes. There were. What proof can you give me for that? The suhuf. First and foremost is the what? The suhuf. But a specific hadith that teaches us that the Prophet allowed people to write down. Or before that. What is the ruling on writing down hadiths in the time of the Prophet? It's permissible. So what about the hadiths that say don't write down anything besides the Quran? What's your answer? All of them are weak? So therefore there's a clash now, there's a contradiction. One hadith says, Uktubu li Abi Shah, and other hadith says, La taktubu anni shay'an siwa al-Quran. So there's a clash. So what is the madhab of the ulama with regards to harmonizing between this clash? Alaykum salam. So what's the first madhab? Madhab الترجيح. مذهبه ايش؟ الترجيح. ترجح حديث الإباحة على حديث المنع. The hadith that pertain to writing down hadiths are stronger and more, so therefore we take them. والمذهب الثاني خالد. What was the second madhab? مذهب الجمع, was to harmonize between the two. طيب خير إن شاء الله وهكذا وهكذا. All right, so let's move forward to the 3rd century. The author rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, يعتبر هذا القرن عصر ازدهار العلوم الإسلامية عامة وعلوم السنة النبوية خاصة، بل يعد هذا القرن من أزهى عصور السنة النبوية، إذ نشطت فيه الرحلة لطلب العلم، ونشط فيه التأليف في علم الرجال، والتوسع في تدوين الحديث، فظهرت كتب المسانيد وكتب الستة والصحاح والسنن التي اعتمدتها الأمة واعتبرتها دواوين الإسلام. وقد برز في هذا العصر كثير من الحفاظ والنقاد والعلماء الجهابذة من أمثال أحمد بن حنبل وإسحاق بن راهوي وعلي بن المديني ويحيى بن معين ومحمد بن مسلم بن نوارة وأبو عبد الله البخاري ومسلم بن حجاج وأبو زرعة وأبو حاتم الرازيان وعثمان بن سعيد وعبد الله بن عبد الرحمن الدارميان وغيرهم كثير ممن كان على أيديهم تأسيس كثير من علوم الحديث عموما وعلم الجرح والتعديل خصوصا، كما ظهر على أيدي هؤلاء الجهابذة الأعلام نوع جديد من التأليف وهو ما عرف بكتب العقيدة، وكان التأليف في ذلك على نوعين: الأول ما جمع فيه مؤلفوه النصوص الواردة في العقيدة من الكتاب والسنة مع بيان منهج السلف من الصحابة والتابعين في فهم هذه النصوص وموقفهم من أصحاب الأهواء، وكان أغلب هذا النوع بعنوان السنة، مثل السنة لأحمد بن حنبل والسنة لابنه عبد الله والسنة لأبي نصر المروزي وغيرهما. النوع الثاني ما سلك فيه مؤلفوه مسلك الرد على المبتدعة وأصحاب الأهواء، وذلك لهتك أستارهم وفضح أسرارهم وتحذير المسلمين منهم وبيان خطرهم على الأمة. طيب, the author, he says the 3rd century is considered to be the best century, the century of flourishing, the century of enlightenment for all of the Islamic sciences, specifically the sciences of hadith. All of the Islamic sciences in general, and the Islamic or the hadith sciences specifically. The 3rd century was the booming era. It was the booming era for all ilm, not just ilm of hadith, poetry, fiqh, lugha, tafsir, etc. Everybody clear on this? That was the booming era, especially for the sciences of hadith. Everything that the previous generations did, they did on a bigger and better scale in this century, a larger scale of traveling, of memorizing, of criticizing the narrators, of writing down, recording, authoring, organizing, etc. And there were new types of books that came into existence during the 3rd century, new genres. From them were al-masanid, the musnads, a type of book called al-musnad. Al-musnad, naam. You have different types of shoes, right? Such as what? You go to a shoe store, a shoe outlet. What are you looking for? What type of shoes are you looking for? Sports. Sports, and there are different types of sports. There are wrestling shoes, boxing shoes, basketball shoes, naam. Old school basketball shoes, modern day basketball shoes, naam. Different types of shoes, naam. Or you have, what else? What about cleats for track and field, soccer, football. Different types of shoes, naam. Skiing shoes, bowling shoes, skateboarding shoes, naam. Different types of shoes, footwear. Or he said, no, I'm not looking for sports. I'm not looking for sportwear. I'm not looking for shoes to, play. What are you looking for? Sandals when it's hot outside. Sandals for men or sandals for women? Boys or girls? Boots when it's cold outside. What type of boots? Canadian cold or American cold? It's different levels of cold. Types of insulation in your boot. Everybody clear on this? You have grams of insulation. Or you're looking for some high heel shoes for a woman. Some type of dress shoes, elegant shoes, shoes for a party. Slippers for your house. They're different types of what? Shoes. They're different types of what? Shoes. But they all fall under the general term of footwear. Of what? Footwear. Everybody clear on this or not? So when we talk about books of hadith, there are different types of books of hadith. There are different types of what? Books of hadith. But they all share one general term, and that is hadith. There are books of hadith that deal with your aqeedah, what you believe in. Hadiths that deal with the rulings, the halal and the haram. Is it permissible to drink this? Is it permissible to eat this? There are hadiths that deal with one's character, one's behavior, how to conduct yourself. There are hadiths that deal with the tafsir of the Quran. That just like there are different types of shoes. But they all fall under the general terminology of footwear. It's genre. Everybody clear on this? So during the 3rd century, there was a new type of book that existed, that evolved actually. And that type of book of hadith is that which is called Al-Musnad. What is a Musnad? We'll get there inshallah. And there are other books which were called As-Sihah. As-Sihah, the plural of As-Sahih. Like Sahih al-Bukhari, for example. And we also had different types of books which were called Sunan. Sunan. A Sunan. This type of book is called a Sunan. Khairan, inshallah. All of those things will be explained in detail. Another highlighting feature of this century was that many great imams, they lived and died. And they flourished during this century, such as Imam Ahmad, Ishaq ibn Rahawayh, Ali ibn al-Madini, Yahya ibn Ma'in. Each and every one of these men, you can take your time and you can read about. You can read about them. Who was Yahya, the son of Ma'in? Read about him. Where was he born? When was he born? Read about his life. Read about his legacy. A student of hadith has to know about the personalities of hadith. You have to know about the A'imma al-A'lam. And I can't give you all of that information in this short period of time that we have. Also in the mixed crowd that we have. In the mixed crowd that we have, you have people on different levels. Certain people that are sitting, that are true lovers of hadith. Certain people that are sitting that speak Arabic. Certain people that are sitting that just want to be in the class. Or just want to hear a good word, or get a faida, or 2 or 3. Or get the reward of sitting in the masjid. Or see a brother, or see a sister. People that are watching that speak Arabic and English. People that are watching, that's a mixed crowd. So the little that I give you, I said, it is your job to do what? Go and fill the rest. Research and read. Who are these imams? Who was Muhammad ibn Muslim ibn Wara? You ever heard his name before? Muhammad ibn Muslim ibn Wara. Who's Abu Hatim al-Razi? Who's Uthman ibn Sa'id? Ad-Darimi. وهكذا. He also talks about a new genre of hadith book as well, and those were the books of Aqeedah. The books of Aqeedah, in which the ulama wrote books on al-Aqeedah. And they either wrote those books establishing the truth from the Kitab and Sunnah and the statements of the Salaf from the Sahaba and the tabi'een, or they wrote books in which they refuted and attacked the false Aqeedah, the baseless Aqeedah. the different groups that began to rear their ugly heads during the 3rd century. Those who said that the Quran was created. Those who said that the Sahaba were ugly people. They weren't righteous, they weren't pious. And they cursed the Sahaba. They disrespected them. Those who said that there's no pre-decree, there's no qadr. Whatever you do in life is chance. And Allah doesn't know what's going to happen until it happens. Those who said that Iman doesn't fluctuate. Either you have it all or you have nothing. Or you can do what you want, say what you want, as long as you say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, you're a believer, complete belief. Incorrect belief. Incorrect belief. And these books didn't exist before the 3rd century. Those ideals existed, those points existed, but there weren't separate, specific books on those topics before the 3rd, what? Century. Everybody clear on this or not? Tight. Moving forward. He says, وَقَدْ تَمَيَّزَ التَّدْوِينُ فِي هَذَا الْقَرْنِ بِمَا يَلِي. Some new things that took place with regards to the compilation of the Sunnah in the 3rd century. The first was تجريد أحاديث رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وتمييزها عن غيرها بعد أن كانت قد دونت في القرن الثاني ممزوجة بأقوال الصحابة وفتاوى التابعين. Many scholars during the 3rd century, they began to separate the Prophet's words from the words of the Salaf. They began to take those statements of the Prophets and separate them from the statements of the Sahaba and the tabi'een. You take an example like Musnad Imam Ahmed. For you to find mawquf in his book is very rare. For you to find mawquf in Muwatta Malik is very likely. Malik was from the 2nd century, Ahmed was from the 3rd century. وهكذا. Not all of the ulama did this, because there are those who wrote books in which there was still mixed, like Musannaf Ibn Abi Shayba. Secondly, الاعتناء ببيان درجة الحديث من حيث الصحة والضعف. The ulama of the 3rd century, they began now to look after authenticity. And not just compile and put together, but they began to now mention and explain the level of authenticity of those hadiths in those books. Number 3, he says, تنوع المصنفات. They began to diversify their writing style. They wrote different types of books. It wasn't just putting it together, etc. Such as what we just mentioned. Number 1, Kutub al-Masanid. Number 2, Kutub al-Sihah wa Sunan, we explained. Number 3, كتب مختلف الحديث ومشكلها أو مشكلها مثل كتاب اختلاف الحديث للإمام الشافعي وكتاب اختلاف الحديث لعلي بن المديني وكتاب تأويل مختلف الحديث لابن قتيبة وغيرها. وهناك الكثير من المصنفات في هذا القرن، نكتفي بذكر القليل منها إشارة إلى الكثير. Another new genre was the genre called كتب مختلف or مختلف الحديث. Tight. So one hadith says that the Prophet ﷺ said, لا يشربن أحدكم قائما. None of you should drink standing up. None of you should drink standing up. Don't drink standing up. And another hadith says that I saw the Messenger of Allah ﷺ drinking Zamzam water and he was standing up. One hadith says don't drink standing. Another hadith says the Prophet himself, he drank standing up. So obviously there's a what? Not necessarily a contradiction, that's a harsh word. It's a clash. If you want to say contradiction, I'll say there's a lack of consistency. One hadith says go right, another hadith says what? The Prophet went left. It's not consistent. Another hadith says, La adwa. La adwa. that there is no adwa, meaning there is no disease that has a mind of its own. There is no infection that has a mind of its own. It can just jump from one person to the next. La adwa, there's no adwa. No infection can just move on to the next person like it has its own will. And another hadith says, Firra min al-majdum, firaraka min al-asad. If you see a leper, then run as far away from him as you possibly can. When you see a leper, you know, back in the day, leprosy was a very big problem. You know what leprosy is? It says, Firra min al-majdum, firaraka min al-asad. When you see a leper, run as far away from them as you can, as fast as you can. Like you're running away from a what? An asad. Everybody clear on this or not? One hadith says that the disease is not going to jump on you and get you. And another hadith says what? Run away. There's a what? There's a what? A clash. There's a what? There's a clash. وَهَكَذَا. And there are many, many other examples as well. So many ulama during the 3rd century, they begin to write books on these topics, gathering all of the narrations about drinking standing up, and all of the narrations about the Prophet saying, don't drink standing up. وَهَكَذَا. And they begin to explain them and expound upon them and basically show you that in actuality there's no contradiction between these two texts. There's no contradiction. Rather, this is for a time, this is specific to the Prophet, this meaning, etc. Everybody clear on this? Don't be lax when it comes to being around someone who's sick. But at the same time, the sickness is only you're going to be affected by the sickness if Allah wills, nothing more. And there's no superstitious belief or practice. Mathalan, this is what we call mukhtalaf al-hadith. What do the ulama, what do they say about these narrations which seem to be contradictory or conflicting? One hadith says, don't face the qibla when you use the restroom. One hadith says that the Prophet ﷺ, he turned his back towards وَهَكَذَا when he used the restroom. وَهَكَذَا. Is there a contradiction? Is one stronger than the other? Or even deeper than that? There's no need for us to mention any other example than that of the examples of what? Kitaba. Aywa. Hadith says don't write down anything besides the Quran. And hadith said what? Say? That's a clash. That's a what? That's a clash. So is there a contradiction? One hadith says don't write anything down. Another hadith says what? Write down. So that, how could that? They wrote books on these topics, showing and explaining that there is no what? Clash or contradiction. وَهَكَذَا. Everybody clear on this one now. Any other example in which there are different texts which are conflicting? Khairan inshallah. Moving forward. This didn't exist in the previous centuries. They knew this. They practiced it, but there were no specific books on it. Everybody clear on this or not? Is everyone with me? From the amana of the teacher. If the teacher says, is everyone with me? It's an amana for you to say, no, I don't understand. And not to sit and be quiet and not say anything. And then later on say, all of this time, I wasn't understanding. That's not the amana. If you don't understand, then you have to what? You have to say something. And that is why me, personally, I'm only speaking for myself. If you listen to my classes, you'll get tired of me saying what? Everybody with me? Everybody got this? Everybody understand? You with me? I'll call on names over and over and over again. That is intentional. I do that what? Intentionally. Because I feel sometimes maybe someone who may shake their head. A brother says, yes, I got it, but deep down inside he doesn't what? He doesn't have it. And that's why we also call upon people and say, now you explain it. I do this all of the time. Right or wrong? If you listen to 10 lectures, you may hear me saying this 100 times. Everybody with me? Everybody got me? You with me? Ikhwan, antumana, everybody, you got me? I say this all of the time. So if you don't understand, there's nothing wrong with not understanding. Wallahi, la aib. There's nothing wrong with that. Lakin al-aib kull al-aib. The problem is for you to sit quiet and be too shy or too embarrassed to say, I didn't get that point. I didn't understand. Can you please repeat that again? I couldn't write it down. You were talking too fast. Everybody clear on this or not? خيرا إن شاء الله. ها قد أعذر من أنذر. ها خالد قد أعذر من أنذر. طيب لئلا يكون للناس ها طيب مبشرين. I've warned. I've freed myself. Huh? طيب خيرا إن شاء الله. No questions right now. الفصل الأول كتب المسانيد. The first section is كتب المسانيد. كتب المسانيد. What's your question?
It's just that that's what it's called if you can do jam. What is a hadith? It's not mukhtalif al-hadith if you do tarjih. It's not mukhtalif al-hadith anymore.
It is. Yes.
They include the things that you have to do tarjih.
They're different madhahib. They're different madhahib, but the general qaida is that إن الجمع أولى من الترجيح. If you can harmonize, then that's what you do. Instead of just taking one narration and say it's stronger than the other one, we can't take the other one. Bel, rather we say إن الجمع وجب إذا أمكن. If you can do it, then it's mandatory. Instead of discarding one text and taking another. And that's also that's still called مختلف الحديث as well. Yes. That's still called مختلف الحديث. Yes. طيب. We need a new reader, please, inshallah. Bismillah. عدي هذا. الثاني. تخرج
الأحاديث على أسماء الصحابة
والضم
أحاديث كل واحد من الصحابة بعضها إلى بعض
وضم أحاديث كل واحد
من الصحابة
بعضها.
إلى بعض مثل مسند الإمام أحمد وأبي يعلى الموصلي وغيرهما.
طيب. Now we're going to talk about musnads. What is a musnad? A musnad is a book of hadith which is organized in a certain way. It's organized in a what? A certain way. Let's go to a department store, okay? How is the department store organized? How is the department store organized? Departments, sections, home, outdoor, electronics, وهكذا, huh? And then there are many sections inside of sections. Inside of the clothing department, men, women, etc. Right? So what would you say if you walked into a store, a department store, and it wasn't arranged, it wasn't organized like that, but it was organized according to the price. The price. This is the generic stuff or the lower price products. Here are the products in the middle. And here are the products which are really, really expensive. Deluxe. Everybody understand this? So in the deluxe section, you have to find your way around. I'm looking for a sofa. I'm looking for a barbecue grill. I'm looking for a tennis racket. I'm looking for a soap saver. I'm looking for a bathrobe. You have to find your way around it. It's all in one place, and everything, the bathrobe, the soap saver, the barbecue grill, the tennis racket, is the finest that you can find in the store. Everybody understand this? And the other store is organized according how? Departments. And in one department, there is the cheap, and then there is the expensive. Everybody clear on this or not? Everybody understand this? So the musnad is a book of hadith that is organized in a specific way, an unorthodox way. And that way or that manner is to take the narrations of one companion and then put them in one place, regardless of the topic of those hadiths, regardless of the authenticity of those hadiths, regardless of how long or how short those hadiths are. These are the hadiths of this one companion, and they're found in one place in my store. Everybody clear on this? So these are the hadiths of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. Now, I collect 30 hadiths of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas. 30. And each hadith from those 30 hadiths has its own what? Its own different what? Nope. There's no category. Allah. There's no category. There's no category. Yes, topic. The first hadith of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas is about the hereafter. The second hadith is about inheritance. The third hadith is about divorce. The fourth hadith is about killing ants. The fifth hadith is about the ruling on killing frogs. The sixth hadith is about sleeping on your stomach. The seventh hadith is about this battle. The eighth hadith is about when the Prophet ﷺ was injured. The ninth hadith is about وَهَكَذَا. It's no topical arrangement. All hadiths of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas are found where? In one place. Once we've reached the 30th hadith of Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, we move on to another companion. Another companion. Everybody clear on this? Another what? Usayd ibn Hudayr radiyallahu anhu. His hadiths. No specific arrangement of the topic, but every hadith in this place is narrated by Usayd ibn Hudayr. Everybody clear on this? وهكذا. 50 companions, 100 companions, 500 companions. That's the department store that's based off of the prices, the price range. Unorthodox, which you're not accustomed to, which you're not used to. The department store that's based off of sections will be equivalent to what book? Sahih Bukhari. Sahih Bukhari starts off with what? Bad'ul Wahi. How revelation began. Then it goes to no way. Kitab Tawheed is the last chapter. What's the next chapter in Sahih Bukhari? This is appalling. Wallahi, this is appalling. Allahumma musta'an. We have to know this like what? Clockwork. What's after Kitab al-Ilm? What's after Kitab al... Slow down. Whoa, slow down. You just said Kitab al-Ilm? Yeah, Allah. No, you're feeding me the wrong information. Kitab al-Iman. This is before Kitab al-Ilm. Everybody understand this? So in Kitab al-Iman, let's say he has 200 hadiths, 250 hadiths. Those hadiths are going to be reported by different companions, or they may be reported by Abu Huraira narrated 20 of those hadiths or 50 of those hadiths, but all of them are going to be on what? On what? Al-Iman. They're all going to be on what? Al-Iman. And those same hadiths are found in the Musnad of Imam Ahmed. Every last one of those hadiths, but is where? Split up. Is what? Split up, all over the place. Abu Huraira's Musnad, his section. Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, his section. Abu Sa'id al-Khudri's section. وهكذا. But Imam al-Bukhari, he put the hadiths of one topic in one place, regardless of the narrator. So that's the Musnad. The Musnad is a book of hadith that takes all of the hadiths of one narrator and puts them in where? One category, one place. And a Sunan or Sahih takes the hadiths of different reporters and puts them in one place based off of their topic. Like the department store. It doesn't matter what it is, but this is the price range, so it's in one place. And here, it's based off of the section, regardless of the price range. You guys with me or not? Everybody with me? What a Musnad is? Just like there are different types of shoes. There are different types of books of hadith. They're not just books of hadith, huh? There are different types of books of hadith. Everybody clear on this? This is very beneficial and extremely important for the layman to know, let alone the student of knowledge. You have to know where your deen came from and how it was preserved and how it was kept safe. And you say to a non-Muslim that you're giving dawah, you have to be a Muslim. There is no option. You have no choice. After you heard about Islam, accept it. Accept it. It's the truth. And from the things that prove that it's the truth is how it has been preserved. How detailed it is, which is like nothing else that you can come across. Everybody understand this? Khairan, inshallah. We're going to stop here tonight with with regards to the workshop, whereas we took a lot of information, a lot of names, categories, dates, timelines, ikram, kathir wa kathir wa kathir. Tayyib, inshallah ta'ala. If there are any questions from the brothers or the sisters pertaining to the topic or other than the topic, on or off the topic, now is the time, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, not afterwards. If there are any questions before or after, or any questions on or off the topic, now is the time. The floor is open now. It's early. We have plenty of time. If there aren't any questions, then alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, awwalan wa akhiran. And thank you very much for your participation, for your attendance, for your time, and for your respect. Jazakumullahu khairan. طيب خلاص الحمد لله. I'm sorry? I don't think any questions. Yeah. You have any online or anything? Inshallah.
Will you take a personal question while you're sitting there?
What's a personal question?
No. A question one-on-one where a person doesn't want to yell at.
Khairan, inshallah. طيب. Let's see if there are any online first. Bidnillah.